All right. Well, welcome to our annual lecture in honor and memory of Rabbi Efraim Greenblatt of blessed memory, who was not only scholar in residence and Balkori at our shul, but really just an amazing figure in our community, who from his little house there on what's the name of the street again with the B?
Barfield.
Barfield, was able to disseminate Torah. Throughout the world, and a man so in love with Torah, he was couldn't find enough books to buy, to research. He was in touch with Gedolei Israel, and it was really an honor that we had his presence in our community and had an opportunity to know him. And of course, he was such an outstanding person as well. And some of his Talmidim are here today. People he studied with, Irvin Tsarenko, Paul Mendelson, and others are here with us. In tribute, as a tribute to the kind of connection he made with them throughout the years. I want to thank Dan Kuberman, who's also a big Talmida, a big student of his, and it was her idea to have this particular class tonight. So I want to thank her for always being on top of that every year. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having it.
We're privileged to have with us tonight some members of Rabbi Greenblatt's family, and I thought we'd open with some reflections, comments, and if they would be good enough, maybe a word of Torah from Rabbi Greenblatt, Rabbi Menachem Greenblatt, who is an outstanding rabbi who has made a tremendous kehillah there in St. Louis and has had a tremendous impact. So Rabbi Greenblatt, would you like to share a few words?
Thank you. I wasn't really prepared to say anything, and I think it's as an informal gathering of old friends. It's first of all, thank you, Rabbi Finkelstein, for inviting me. I was very touched to get your email that you're going to give a shir in memory of my father. And I had spoken to Diane, and thank you, Diane, for the role that you played in putting this together, and everyone that joined. It really is. It's very, very meaningful to me and to my family. In fact, I just got off another Zoom, and the timing is perfect, Rabbi Finkelstein, because my son Moshe in Lakewood, he made a siyum on Masechta Sukkah, and our family that lives in, my sister and her husband and my nieces, they had a nice siyum with a delicious looking meal, and we were able to Zoom in, and my children all in, and so it was really heartwarming. And at the occasion of the siyum, I just said over a childhood memory that I'll share with you as well. I was about 4 years old. I couldn't have been more than 4. I remember where I was in my old house in the old neighborhood, and my father called me into his study, and he said, he said, I want to give you something. He took a gum, and a stick of gum, and he tore it in half, and he gave me half a piece of gum. And I looked at him, he says, I'm making a siyum. I just finished a Masechta. So at that early age, I knew that if there's a siyum, it's something special. You finish a tractate and you celebrate, but in his modest way, he didn't have a whole, a big meal, but it's enough that it made an impression on me. That siyum of a half a stick of gum made an impression that it's lasted 60 years. And it reminds me of the hours and hours that he put in Torah study in Memphis at a time when, there was not a formal yeshiva on a higher level. There was no high school. There was no learning partner that he had as an equal. And he did it all by himself, which is, it could be very, very daunting. And it was year after year. It was decade after decade. And he accomplished so much that he was able to accomplish his goals and publish his books, and with the help of many of you and the community at large. And the name of the Memphis Jewish community was well known and appreciated throughout the world, in part due to my father and my mother. Together, they were a great team, as you know, and they influenced the lives of many people. So I always, when I speak about my father, I cannot leave my mother out, because she was such an integral part and such a encouragement and a support to him in all of his efforts. Tonight is his yard site, and so again, I'm happy that the years that he 53, I believe, or 52, until he moved to Eretz Israel in 2009. So many decades later, he has still good friends, and we have good memories. And it really is heartwarming to me to know that you all remember him and you took the time to get on this Zoom. And that's about as much as I want to take your time tonight, because I'm sure everyone has what to do. It's before Shabbos tonight. So I will give it back to Rabbi Finkelstein, and I'm very eager to hear, to listen to your Divrei Torah, Rabbi Finkelstein, and thank you again.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you, and I know you're very busy with tremendous kehila, and if you have to go, it's fine. But it was just a great honor for us to have you join us tonight, and hope in future years we'll have you again with a crowd and with a formal lecture and all that. We'll look forward. So thank you so much. And actually, I did once hear that story from you, and it made an impression on me. And as I was making a siyum recently in our Daf Yomi, I mentioned it in terms of that for Rabbi Efraim Greenblatt, it was sort of de rigueur, another siyum, have a piece of gum. But for most of us, it's such a rare occasion. But for those who zip through Shas and who had so many different chavrusas, one time Rabbi Greenblatt was talking to me and he said, I'm learning about 10 different masechtas right now, because he's learning with this one and he's learning with that one, he's learning with and I also sometimes think about that as I try to, in my very small way, emulate that. Well, I'll be learning with different people, and I'll say to myself, well, how many masechtas am I learning now? Because the way he learned with so many people and the way he learned, all the time, it was very, very inspiring. So thank you, Rabbi Menachem, for sharing that and for being with us tonight.
Yes.
I know some people have to go, so maybe at the end we could share some other personal reflections. But I did want to get to our shir, L'Zecher Nishmas, in memory of Rabbi Efraim Greenblatt, Zecher Tzadik L'Vracha. So let me share with you the screen as we talk a little bit about the 4 languages of redemption. In this week's parsha, we have these 4 languages of redemption based on which we have the 4 cups. We have 4 cups on Pesach, probably according to Yerushalmi and Medrash, according to Rashi, Rashbam. It's because there are 4 languages of redemption that God said in 4 different ways in the beginning of our parsha that He's going to redeem us. So that's why we have 4 cups. But so if we have time at the end, we'll get back into the 4 cups. Right now, most of us are not holding on Pesach, unless you're doing Daf Yomi, but we're not really thinking about Pesach so much. But we're thinking about the parsha and the 4 ways that God turns to Moshe and He says, I'm going to, I will take you out, I will save you, I will redeem you, and I will take you as my people. These are the 4 languages of redemption we'll see in a moment. And we want to understand why 4 languages. Just say, I'm going to take you out of Egypt. In fact, at the burning bush, He told them, I'm taking you out of Egypt. In this week's parsha, Moshe gets a new charge from God, and there's somehow something about 4 languages of redemption. What's it all about? So Jerusalem, just to go back to the 4 cups reference for a moment, the Jerusalem Talmud, and also found in Medrash Rabbah, it says, where did the sages institute 4 cups? Because Rabbi Benaiah says that what? Against the 4 redemptions said in Egypt. Oh, the 4 redemptions, I shall take you out of the toils of Egypt. I shall save you from their work. I shall redeem you with a strong arm and with great signs, and I shall take you as my people, and you shall be my God. So these 4 languages, 4 ways in which God said there's redemption, these are the 4 cups. Again, we have to understand. All right, so God said redemption in different ways. Why is that important to have 4 cups for it? So we'll have to get back to that later. Let's examine these 4 things and let's see, how do they relate one to another? Let's say I said 4 synonyms for what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to take the kids to the baseball game, and we're going to have a good time, and it's going to be great, and we're going to have a real family outing. So what's the difference in the 4 languages? It's the same thing. So we need to understand, what are these 4 languages? I shall take out, I shall save, I shall redeem, I shall take. And by the way, in the Anshei, when in the Melvin Silverstein Chapel, and also in the Efraim Greenblatt base measures, there in that base measure, we happen to have 4 Torahs. So I asked Judy Levine to make 4 Torahs, and they say the 4 languages of redemption on them. We still have the covers, and we use them on different occasions. But the 4 languages of redemption. So let's look at it. I shall take you out of the toils of Egypt, take you out. shall save you from their work, avodatam. Ga'alti, I will redeem you. What does it mean to redeem? Strong arm, great signs. Shall take you to me as a people. That one's very different, right? That's not about going out. It's about what the result. After we go out, God takes us as his people. Where did God do that? When did he do that? What does it mean? So these are the four languages. Let's examine it a little more. Let's think about it a little bit more. What do they represent? So Ramban takes a stab at it. I don't know if it's so crisp. Let's take a look. He says, I will save them from the work that they will not reign over them. No one will rule over them at all in their place as a work task. They have to pay this head tax to work so hard. So which stage of the redemption was that? What are we talking about? Different stages that they will save them their work, that they will not reign over them in their place as a work task. Lamas oved. So is it just talking about the pure getting out of work? No, that they don't have to do that hard back-breaking work anymore. Then he says, I will redeem you. Ramban Nachmanides explains, do miracles. Till the Egyptians will say, you can have Israel instead of our souls. You can have the Jews, you can take the Jews back to save our souls. It's a redemption. Why is the word redemption used? Why is that one of the synonyms being used here for going out of Egypt? Because a redemption took place. They said, I'll tell you what, we don't want to die with all the plagues. Take the Jews, get them out of here. And that will be a redemption for our souls. So I will make an exchange between you and the Egyptians. Interesting. And then Salty. I'm sorry, the first one, we missed the first one. Take you out of the land of Egypt. They will not suffer from the weight of the burden. It's not so clear which burden. So the second one, to save you, is actually not to have to work at all. But the first one is the burden. So again, what do you mean? How does that work? Are these different stages of redemption? It's not so clear to me from the Ramban. Maybe I'm sure I'm not appreciating it enough. Then he says, I will take you as a nation when you come to Mount Sinai. So that's a different thing. So we have the suffering. Get rid of the suffering. That's stage number one. Number two, they don't have to work at all. Number three, they make an exchange. The Egyptians are spared. The Jews go out. It's an exchange, a redemption. And then I take you as a nation. We get to Mount Sinai. It's not crisp enough. I'm not sure. What are the four stages? Let's continue. Let's see who else talks about this. Rav Samson Val Hirsch says the three languages, I have a full text there, but a brief translation. The three languages correspond to the three levels of exile expressed in the covenant of the parts. So it relates to the first time we were told about slavery, 400 years of slavery. The first time we were told, they were told certain things, and it relates to those things. Let me just let everyone unmute so I will not hear that echo. Okay, great. Let me get back to this. So when the Jews were told, when Abraham was told that you'll be slaves for 400 years, God used certain languages when he was talking to Abraham about that. He says, your children will be strangers. Va'avadum, they will enslave them. V'inuotem, they'll afflict them. So the three things that God told Abraham that would happen, that's what these four languages of redemption are all about. I will take you out of the suffering of Egypt. That's the affliction that the Egyptians Abraham was told that the Egyptians would afflict the Jews. So God tells Moses, I will take you out of the affliction. You won't be afflicted. Number two, I will save you from their work. That's the slavery, because God said he would enslave us, that the Egyptians would enslave us. I'll redeem you from exile. Because when you're in exile, you have nobody to help you, right? If any of us had to go to jail, someone would bail us out, right? But if you're in exile, there's no one to help you, to redeem you. So I'll redeem you from exile. I'll take you out. Because if you were really just a wandering Jew, you wouldn't have a redeemer. So you won't be strangers. God told Abraham, you would be strangers in a strange land. Well, if you're strangers, you have no social support network. that would redeem you. But God says, no, I will redeem you, even though you're a stranger, you're a ger. Sometimes a convert doesn't have anyone to redeem him. If he falls into poverty, he doesn't have a cousin or an Uncle Steve or something who's Jewish who can get him out of the trouble. So God says, I'm your uncle. I'm going to redeem you. You're not going to be a stranger. So it corresponds to these three things that Abraham was promised. Moses is now undoing the three promises of slavery. What's the fourth thing? Take you as a nation. This is the goal of the spiritual redemption, which comes at the heels of the physical redemption. The first three levels are the physical redemption, which Abraham was told about in the covenant of the parts. Fourth one is part of the spiritual redemption. By the way, those of you who are big Rabbi Greenblatt fans, we will get to a thought from Rabbi Greenblatt about this, which will be the culminating point of our talk. So that's Rav Hirsch. That's how he tries to make sense. The four things are not just hodgepodge of different things. Well, I kind of read the Ramban, but rather it relates specifically to the promise of exile to Abraham. And now there's the promise of redemption from those three elements. And then a fourth element of the spiritual redemption, in addition to the physical redemption. Rav Yosef Bechor was a rabbi after Rashi in France, and he says, he gives us a hint into how to view these four languages. He says, I will not redeem them right away. For if I wanted to, I could send them right away. For his heart is in my hands. Pharaoh's heart is in my hands. As it says, the streams of water is the heart of the king in the hands of God. God tells everybody what to do, right? So especially if you're a leader, if you're a king, you don't have so much free will. The international politics goes the way God wants it to go. Whatever he will do. It's a verse in Proverbs. So why is the redemption going so slowly? 10 plagues. But I want to do big miracles to take revenge because he enslaved my children and in order to tell my glory. So perhaps the four languages say to Moses, say to Moshe, I know you're anxious. You want to let the Jews go. At the end of Parshat Shemot, Moshe is complaining, the things are not going well. He says, but look, we have to be patient. I'll take you out slowly because I want to have time to take revenge. I want to have time to show my glory, different realms, all the realms of creation, show that God is sovereign in the water, sovereign in the air, sovereign in the dirt, sovereign in people, sovereign in animals. So God has a lot of things to show. It's going to be more slow. So this week's Parsha opens up, not with the burning bush where he says, we're going out of Egypt. And then Moshe says at the end of Parsha Shemot, he says, God, you didn't take him out of Egypt. God, so Hashem says, slow down, hold your horses. I have a lot of things that I want to take revenge. I want to, only God is allowed to take revenge. We're not allowed to take revenge. I want to show my glory in different ways. So hold your horses. It's going to take a while. That's the idea of the four languages of redemption. Redemption is a little bit slow. Chachma really famous for having, the mega theory, the bombshell theory about the four levels of redemption. He says, I will take you out. The first language, it's like what they say, taking them out is like removing a baby from the womb. The rabbi said we were so ensconced in and entangled in Egypt. Taking us out was like delivering a baby, right? I don't know how to deliver a baby. How do you get a baby out? So it's like taking a baby from the womb, since they were so ensconced in the idolatry and the false ideas of Egypt. So I'll take you out. He says it was a hard thing. He had to kind of get us out of that assimilative mode, the assimilation mode. I will save you, he says. They afflicted us to destroy us. As it says, all the children of the Nile will be thrown in the Nile. Egypt wasn't just a question of persecution, it was a question of life and death. They were killing us. So the word saving, often you use in Hebrew, it's good to know in case you're, God forbid, in danger in Israel, you say, Hatzilu, Hatzilu, save me, save me. And Hatzilu is usually from murder. Someone trying to kill you, God forbid, you say Hatzilu. So he said, Hitzaltiach, and the second language is, I will save you from the death, because part of the affliction was death. Many of oppressions are like this, right? I don't think slavery, for instance, in America wasn't just beating people on the getting lashes on their shoulders. People died. We were hung, nooses, and all kinds of coming over from Africa. There were a lot of people died. It's there's death involved, and so saving means to be saved from the death part of it. I will redeem you. That's from the slavery. To be free without masters. Good. He's not as tight with the word redemption, but from the slavery. Sometimes sometimes you need someone to redeem you from slavery. Talks about at the end of Leviticus, the end of Vayikra, it says that if you fall into slavery, then someone should redeem you and get you out of it. So maybe that's the sense. I will take you out to be a moral nation with order, and God is their king. So clearly the fourth one is a much higher order of things. So the first is to get out of the assimilation of the non-Jewish identity that we had. Save you is literally save you from death and being thrown in the river. The redemption, that's the actual getting out of slavery, like when a relative redeems you out of slavery, and it will take you out, I'll take you to be a nation, is to be a moral nation with order. We're not just going out, as Eric Fromm apparently said, it's not just freedom from, but freedom to. You don't just want to have freedom from oppression, but we want to have freedom to worship God. So the Meshech Chochmah has a bit of a progression, right? Right. Just getting out of the ideas of Egypt is not from slavery, and just being saved from death is not getting out of slavery. Then it's finally getting out of slavery, and then getting out of slavery is not enough. We have to have a spiritual purpose for this freedom. Meshech Chochmah. Then getting back to the four cups, he has an interesting theory as well, just as an aside, that there are the four cups that we drink today correspond to the four languages. They also correspond to the four things that Jews excelled at in Egypt, for which we were redeemed. Number one, we were not licentious. The Jews still had family life in Egypt, and that's why we have Kiddush was the first cup, because Kiddush is holiness. We maintained our holiness. We did not descend into licentiousness in Egypt. The Magid is when you tell about your family. Slaves can't always tell about their family because they get separated. Children get separated from mothers and sons and fathers. You don't see your children. But we are able to tell about our ancestors. And also, we didn't change our names in Egypt because names represent, a chain of, you get named after your Bubby and your Zayd. The benching, we say one of the cups that we have, which corresponds to the four languages of redemption, is about benching. Benching is faith. Because in Egypt, the Jews did not tattle against each other to the authorities. Sometimes when you're a slave, you try to win points with the master by telling on each other. They didn't do that, generally speaking. Why? They didn't tell lashon hara against each other because they had faith. If you feel insecure, you tattle to save your neck. The Jews felt they had God on their side. They had faith. That's one of the good things about the Jews in Egypt. They weren't licentious. They didn't change their names. They knew their Jewish family and story, and they didn't tattle. And finally, the Hallel, we say a cup, the fourth cup corresponding to the fourth idea, is over the Hallel, the songs of thanksgiving. And the new nationhood that will come, the Jews didn't lose their language. Hallel is for the new nationhood that will come, and the Jews didn't lose our language of redemption. We didn't forget that Pakod Pakati. Joseph said, "Don't worry, I'll save you from Egypt. Don't forget, the Jews will be saved." When Moshe came, he said, "Pakod Pakati, I'm using the same language that Joseph told you. We're going to redeem you." The Jews didn't lose their language of redemption. So the four cups correspond to the four elements of what was so outstanding about the Jews in Egypt. Last week we talked about how Jews were so miserable in Egypt. They worshipped idols, but they also had four things going for them. And the four cups correspond to those four things we had going for them. But mostly I wanted to emphasize that there are four stages of redemption corresponding to four elements of our freedom. Along those lines, why did we use wine for the four cups? Why not 4 glasses of water, 4 cups of tea, or something? Why wine? So again, because the Jews remained distinct in Egypt, and wine represents distinction. Because why is there Jewish wine? What does it mean? The Jewish wine doesn't have pig in it. The regular wine has the lard in it. What's wrong with non-kosher wine? The idea is that there's a limit to our intercourse with the Gentile. We don't drink with the Gentile. Again, you could, if you have the right kind of wine, the right kind of beer, you could theoretically get away with it. But the rabbis wanted to limit the drinking we do with Gentiles because they didn't want us to come to marry their daughters when you're having a drink together. Maybe you make a shidduch between your son and their daughter. So wine represents that distinction of one to another, or even Haman knew when he wanted to talk about how separatist the Jews were. Haman, as the Gemara in Megillah tells the story, he told Achashverosh, the Jews are no good. If a fly falls in their cup, they throw it away. But if you touch their cup, when a fly falls in, they throw away the fly, they drink the cup. If you, Achashverosh, hold their cup, you move their cup, you pour their cup, they will take the whole thing and throw it in the garbage. So our distinctiveness comes from wine. So the wine, the four languages, the four things that we do, they all represent what's unique and distinct about the Jews. The Malbim has another theory as to what the progression is from one language to another. He says, first I'll take you out. What was the problem? The first thing was that when Moses came, the work got harder. They didn't even get straw to make, straw bricks. You take mud and you make a brick out of it, it falls apart. But if you put straw in it, it holds it together. So Pharaoh said, guess what? I'm not giving you any straw. You have to find your own straw. So the Jews are roaming around the nation looking for straw on the ground. And then they put the mud together. So that was the first affliction we wanted to get out of, that decree of Pharaoh that no straw would be given. So that was our first step. I will take you out from the hard yoke, mitachat sivlo, the sevel, the hard afflicting kind of work, because they didn't even give us straw. Second thing is this, I will save you. For after the plague of the firstborn, we stopped working totally, and we were free, but not completely. So save you from the work. When did we stop working? The 10th plague. But are we out of Egypt? No. But then when we actually went out, that's the redemption. That's the fourth one. And we were fully went out when the Egyptians drowned. Three stages. And the final one, the second thing is the giving of the Torah. Then I'll take you as my people. That's a whole different thing. Again, the fourth cup is in its own category. So again, he has a very neat system that first they undid the most recent decree that it was miserable to make the bricks. Then they actually stopped working, but then they actually went out of Egypt, and then they became a people with the Torah. So all these different stages. The notion that there were different stages of redemption is mentioned in the Tosfot Rosh Hashanah, who says what the Talmud says that on Rosh Hashanah we stop working in Egypt. So he says to himself, Rosh Hashanah, we stopped working in Egypt. When did we stop working? We stopped working on Pesach when we went out of Egypt. What do you mean we stopped working on Rosh Hashanah? So Tosfot says, look, Rabbi Yeshua agrees in most of the editions of the Talmud. He says, of course, the plague started in Nisan time. That's what he says. Because he says there's a Mishnah in Eidio somehow that there was a 12-month period of affliction. All the 10 plagues took 10 months, 12 months, because the judgment of wicked people is 12 months. That's why we don't say Kaddish for 12 months, because our parents are not wicked. We only say Kaddish for 11 months, but the truly wicked, they would suffer for 12 months. So the Egyptians were wicked, they suffered for 12 months. So it started at Pesach time, the first plague, the blood, and ended on Pesach when they're going out of Egypt. But lo Pascha avodah Tishrei, they had 6 plagues. They still had to work, but in when it came to the midpoint of the year, the 7th month for Rosh Hashanah, they stopped working. So also according to Tosfot, there were stages in our redemption. First, 6 months before we went out, we didn't have to work anymore. We weren't slaves anymore. And then until we got out was a different story. And this may relate to the notion that sometimes redemption has to take place slowly. And it relates to the famous story, people like to tell this in Israel. It's the Yerushalmi and Brachos. Rabbi and Reb Shimon ben Chalafta were walking in the valley of Arbel, it's a northern hill in Israel, a hilly region, and they saw the dawn of the sun. So Rabbi Chia said, so is the redemption of Israel. This sun is a good metaphor for the redemption of Israel. At first, little by little, the redemption comes slowly. As it goes, it grows. Why? As it says in the prophet Micha, even when I sit in darkness, God is light to me. God, the redemption is like a light. So at first, Mordechai sat at the gate of the king. He's pretty important. Oh, it's good. The Jews have political power, but still, we're going to die. Haman's going to kill us. And then Haman took the garments and the horse. and put them on Mordechai. Oh, it's good. Mordechai's getting honored, but we're still going to die. And then Mordechai went back to the gate of the king, and Haman went in mourning. It's good. Haman is sad. Mordechai's happy. Okay, but we're still going to die. And then what happened? Then Mordechai went with garments of kingship after that, and the Jews, there was great joy, and that we were saved, and we didn't die, and that was the story of Purim. So the redemption sometimes takes place in stages, slowly, one step after the other. The future redemption will take place that way. Mordecai's redemption, Esther, took place that way, and the redemption in Egypt was also step by step, as we outlined all these various different rabbis that we saw, the Ramban, the Meshech Chochmah, the Reb Shimshon Fala. Now, the fact is, it says right there in Shemot, this notion that we don't go out right away. It says, I know that Pharaoh won't let you go. Therefore, I'll send all kinds of plagues. Every time he says no, I'll send another plague. So Hashem says it very clearly that we're not going out that directly and quickly. It took a while. In fact, in the future redemption, this is a notion in Isaiah 52. When the end of days, when God wants to redeem us, why doesn't he redeem us? It's been 2,000 years. Now it's time already. He's showing sight. Let's be redeemed right away. He says, no, you're not going to be redeemed quickly because God is taking you. You don't have to worry. No one will attack you. You can walk slowly. You can walk in a dignified way. You don't have to run. No one's pushing you out. The Gentiles will give as much time as we want to go to Israel. The Ma'aseh Nisim Haggadah, one of the commentators, I think, is Eliezer Ashkenazi. So he says, it seems from this verse in Isaiah, going out quickly is not good. Because it says, let me tell you something, it's going to be a wonderful redemption. You won't go out quickly. I want to get out of here as fast as possible, right? Get me out of here. Why would I want to go slowly? He says, no, it's not a good thing. So why? Why is it not a good thing to go out quickly? It seems to me, when the redemption of Egypt took place, since we hadn't expunged ourselves of the impurity, it was a place of impurity. God couldn't redeem him or reveal himself to us. We were so impure. The land was so impure. Because he wanted to reveal himself, and in Egypt, we just couldn't do it. He had to rush us out of Egypt. But in the future, able to, it's not the issue of we won't be in Egypt, a place where God can't reveal himself. God can reveal himself. He won't have to rush us out. He can reveal himself, perhaps in the land of Israel, in the end of the day. So somehow it's good for the redemption to take place slowly. Now we get to a thought from Efraim Greenblatt in his Sefer on the Rivos Ephraim on the Torah. He has a book of the Torah on the Parsha, and he says as follows. The verse says, it's a very difficult verse. It looks like an easy verse. It's like, oh, God told Moses to take the Jews out of Egypt. But it doesn't say that. It says, God told Moshe and Aaron. Okay, what did he tell them? And he commanded the Jewish people. What did he command the Jewish people? And he commanded Paro. What did he command all these people? He told them to take the Jews out of Egypt. He told the people to take themselves out of Egypt. It's a difficult passage. So Rashi says, he commended them to the children of Israel. What does that mean? He gave them a charge regarding them. He commanded them, not to Bnei Israel, commanded Moses and Aaron regarding the Jews. What about the Jews? What did he tell them? To deal with them in a gentle manner and to be patient with them. As the Jews go out of Egypt, it's not easy. They're going to complain. They're used to being in Egypt. They're used to the watermelon and certain things. You have to be patient with the Jews. Of course, it was very difficult to do that. But God tells them, you have to be patient. It's supposedly from Medrash Rabbah. I didn't see it in Medrash Rabbah exactly like this. It was Rashi's idea a little bit, that you have to be patient with the Jews. Comes Rabbi Ephraim and he says, we learn from here. Davar Gadol, a very important concept. How do we restore Jews in repentance? And we know that Rabbi Greenblatt was all about helping Jews return to Judaism at whatever level. If they could learn a little bit more, they could be a little more religious, have a little more connection to Torah. That was what Rabbi Greenblatt was all about. So he says, how do you bring the Jewish people back to repent to God? You should go slowly. You have to suffer some of the strange things that Jews do. To explain them, the proper way. And slowly, slowly, they will recognize, they will know that that is the true way to be. The main way. How and why to worship God. They'll eat kosher food, other mitzvahs. They'll do it one by one mitzvah at a time, slowly, slowly, and the redemption will come. So this notion of the 4 cups of redemption, it's not just the thing of the past. Well, it's an interesting historical point. Those are interested in history that God took us out slowly. No, it's also about the future redemption. You're not going to go out quickly. Sometimes there's a need to go step by step. Maybe there are different stages we need to go through. Maybe it's about getting out of the exile. I don't know. Maybe after some of the events recently, maybe some people feel a little less connected to the United States of America, and we feel like we have our own values and our own things. I don't know. Maybe it takes time, and maybe we take one step at a time in our Jewish commitments, and each one our own level of things we want to do to help bring redemption closer. It's as we think about the redemption today, this metaphor of the Jerusalem Talmud, that the redemption sometimes is slow. My teacher in Israel, Rabbi Mital, used to say that I was in Israel when Israel was giving land back to the Arabs, and some people said it was bad, it was good, and we were giving a part of Sinai. And he said, sometimes the redemption comes in strange ways. You go up and you go down and you go forward, and the road is twisty. And sometimes redemption is not all at once. And that's the way it was in the past. And that's the way it has to be today. And Rabbi Greenblatt taught us that that's the spiritual redemption is the same way. To be patient with each other, our fellow Jews, and help each Jew come a little bit closer, take another step closer. Rabbi Greenblatt was an expert in that. There's so many people in our community who really benefited so much from learning with Rabbi Greenblatt, being connected with Rabbi Greenblatt. Some people, just the notion that they once learned with Rabbi Greenblatt, that's their biggest connection to Torah, and it's a tremendous inspiration for them to know they learned with such a man so dedicated to Torah, so famous for all his teachings and his decisions about Jewish law and his books, and that connection. It's slow, one step at a time, until we reach the promised land. So those are main thoughts for tonight on the 4 cups of redemption. It's not just 4 different ways of saying the same thing. It's 4 levels, and those levels are in sequence, and those levels show the importance of going a step at a time to get to a more perfect world. Sometimes people today talk about, we're going to have a fund, $2 billion, we're going to solve all the problems in the whole world. Because there's a certain impatience with problems. I think we have to recognize that we live in a small historical moment, and we have to do our part in our generation, and each generation hopefully will build and be greater and greater, and eventually Hagdil Torah and Hadira, then one day the Torah will be brought to its greatest expression, and there'll be true redemption. So those are some thoughts for today. If anybody at this point would like to share some thoughts on this discussion, or on some reflections of Rabbi Greenblatt, I welcome and open the floor at this time.